Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Coaching from the Couch. This is your Washington Commanders update, and I am your host, CWall, as I check in each and every single week to give you the latest and greatest in the hot topics and tips on the Washington Commanders. Whew. And we're going to take our time. We're gonna take our time. Just because the virtual environment didn't want to cooperate, that does not mean we will not continue on with the conversation because we have a show to do. So you have to go ahead and get through the conversation. And while we're doing that, you all already know the drill. Regardless of how the game turns out, we have to always do this one, and that is what's your one word? And what is your one word? As soon as the game was over, what was the one word that you used to describe how you felt once it was all said and done? And Kimberly, I see that you have a few words written down here, but maybe you said them in sentences. So it was like three different sentences. So it was like relax, relate, and then release. That was how you felt at the end of the Commanders' loss to the New York Giants. And Mama Wallace says she was sad, or it was sad. It was just sad. That's Mama Wallace's one word. Cameron Mingo has deflated as his one word. You all continue to drop those one words into the chat as we have this conversation. I see Lamar Bland jumped in and he said, see, Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen had a lot. He had a few words, four letters in nature. So, you know, there is that. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's how I'm thinking we're going to do this. We're going to jump right on into the press conferences, the after game press conferences. Here's why. I want you all, now that you've had 24 hours and some change, right, to think through what happened, what everybody watched. It was a rough watch for all parties involved. I want to get your thoughts. We're going to go through the whole entire press conference, after game press conference. Up first is going to be Ron Rivera's. So listen intently, very with your good ears, to everything that Ron Rivera had to say. Then we're going to discuss what he said, and then in preparation for next week. And then I definitely want to take a moment to then check out Sam Howell's press conference as well. So I know the open wound still stings. It might still feel like we're throwing a little bit of salt in it, but I think it's important for us to have these discussions to really get into the after game pressers. So drop in the chat what you're thinking in response to what's being said in the after game presser. This is about 5 minutes. Up first is Ron Rivera's after game press conference.
Slow to adjust. What do you think?
Well, they threw a lot of different things at us, and again, we got to be able to pick them up and slow it down. I mean, that's the truth about it. The first half, whatever they did, they were having a little more success than we needed them to have. We got to be able to be better at early on and make those adjustments a little bit quicker. We came out at halftime, and I thought these adjustments that were made were what we needed to have.
Obviously, in this league, anybody can beat anybody, but 2 of the last 4 weeks, lost to the Bears, lose this game. Do you feel like it's slipping away after games like this at all?
Well, I don't know. It depends on what's the next game. And to me, it's really about how you bounce back more than it is anything else. With 10 games left to go, you never know what's going to happen. But you got to take them one at a time. You got to stay focused on it. We'll correct these things. There's a lot of things that we can correct. A lot of things we're going to get better at, and we'll continue to get, work at it, and we'll see what happens.
What was the game plan to handle pressure, and why was it ineffective?
It's the same game plan that we used in the second half that was effective. Unfortunately, we didn't get it done early on. We put ourselves in a tough spot.
Why not?
Because we didn't handle it.
Third down conversions were a problem last week and continued today. What did you kind of see on that play?
First half, we struggled getting the conversions. In the second half, we were able to get them done. We did things better in the second half than we did in the first half.
Whether it's the sacks or the third down, what do you think changed? Was it something you guys talked about specifically at halftime, or what
Yep,
changed?
some of the corrections that were made, some of the things that we did better. And I thought some of the execution things in the second half were exactly what we needed. We did a lot of good things. Unfortunately, we didn't capitalize. We get the ball down in the red zone and we get a kick block. We get down in the red zone. Unfortunately, we didn't score at the end. But that's football. That's part of the game. We'll continue to work at it. We'll continue to look at the things we're doing. We'll evaluate what we're doing, and we'll get those things corrected.
What was the explanation for that final seconds there when there was the injury and you guys weren't able to get the ball back? Duran was injured.
Well,
and then
we were out of timeouts. So when you're out of timeouts, automatically what happens is there's a 10-second write-off.
And then before halftime, you had the opportunity to call a timeout and potentially get the ball back and opted not to.
At that point, enough was enough. We were going to go in. We were going to talk about the things that we needed to get done. The drive beforehand was not a very good situation, and I just felt it'd be better for us to get in, talk about those things. We were going to get the ball to begin with in the second half.
The Giants hadn't scored a first-half offensive touchdown this season. How surprised were you by their offensive success early?
Well, I was disappointed in it. We had a couple opportunities to make some stops, and we missed those opportunities.
Do you think it was their result of just running different stuff? Was it anything you weren't expecting?
Well, I think they did exactly a lot of the things that we thought they would do. Unfortunately, we didn't capitalize on the chance to get out on third down. We didn't capitalize on the opportunity to make plays when we had them. We could have probably put them in a better situation a couple times too. So again, these are all things that we'll have to go and evaluate.
Ron, I know the film. You probably have to look at the film, but on some of those sacks in the first half, how much of that is sliding a protection one way to take away some things, and how much of it is physical mistakes execution-wise?
Well, I mean, again, David, the fair thing is to take a look at the tape more than it is anything else. You got to take a look at those things. You got to really get a chance to dive into them and see what happened early on. In the second half, I thought we handled those situations a little bit better.
Was the tackle eligible always part of what you were looking at as potential things?
It was something that we considered doing, and it was something that Eric used in the second half to kind of help shore some things up.
Take 3 more.
I know you said the O-line had started to make some progress. Did you feel in any way this game was sort of a setback, or what did you want to see from that group that maybe you didn't in the first half?
No, what I wanted to see us was play better, be more efficient, be more consistent as a team, more so than anything else. I mean, there's a lot of little details that were missed, and these things have to be looked at and corrected.
What was your general message to the team afterward?
It was pretty much a follow-up of what I had said at halftime, about going out and doing our jobs more so than anything else. Pay attention to the details, the little things. Those are things that are going to help you have success. I thought they came out in the second half and gave themselves a chance to win, but you can't go down 14-0 and expect to pull things out all the time.
Ron, on the blocked field goal, was that more them, or did you identify something you guys didn't do well enough?
Well, we'll have to take a look at it. I mean, he went up, big man, and put a paw on it and knocked it down. We got to take a look and see, what the trajectory of the kick was, how much of a push he got up front, if he got any push at all.
All right, thanks, Coach.
All right.
If you are just tuning in, you are watching from the Coaching from the Couch series, the Washington Commanders Update, and I'm your host, CWall from Bowie Television. We were in the building, as we always are, covering the game on site. And make sure you're hitting that love button, like button, sharing this show with your Washington Commanders loving family and friends, because we do talk about the conversation live before it hits the television screens each and every single day from 1:30 to 2:30 and on the weekends during the noon hour. I already saw that Lamar Bland said it. Ron didn't want to talk. No, he did not. And this is why. Of course he didn't, right? And of course he didn't. Let me say, no, he didn't want to talk. End of sentence. And of course he did not want to talk, right? But he has to. This is why I always say, if you've been watching this show for a while, hello and welcome. And if you're new, hello and welcome. I always want to dive into the after game press conference. And I'm going to tell you why, because that's how you really feel. That's where you really are with things. That's really your aura and your ambiance. And that's what I want to talk about, and that's what I want to see. Here was my one word. My one word for after this game was regression. You all have heard me say, so, and I have my pen in my hand because I have my notes. So I'm in like teacher mode a little bit. But I always want to see progress. Things that we saw in the summer at camp, I don't necessarily want to see it in September. If I see it, it's kind of like, okay, but mid-October, we got an issue. You've also heard me say weeks 5 through 7, that's when you start to really understand what you got going on. Because whatever and hey, sometimes the game just doesn't fall your way. However, as a team, what you have in your units, weeks 5 through 7, that's when you're like, okay, what's going on here? What's happening here with my team? You should know. I'm talking about as a coach. If I'm a coach, you know who you have, what you have. You understand what's working, what hasn't been working. You understand a lot of the mannerisms, the where they're getting, what they're good at, what their strengths are, areas of growth, areas of improvement. You start to know all of those things, especially from game day, weeks 5 to 7. In week 5 was the Chicago Bears game. Then you got week 6, which didn't look all that good, but they ended up coming up with the W. And then you got week 7 against the Giants. My one word, going back to that, regression. We've seen the Commanders in recent weeks do things not well that they were doing well previously. And I say to myself, what is going on? What is happening? We'll get to Sam Howell in a minute because we want to go through his press conference as well. We'll get to the offense in a minute. I'm just talking about the team. We understand, we already knew going in this offense, you got a new offensive coordinator. I might as well say a new rookie to starting quarterback, right? You got a new offensive line, most of it, for the most part, new together. Your defense, pretty much the same. You got some new guys, ball hawks that you've just drafted. But everybody else, your veterans, your leadership team on that side, it's the same. It's your core. I say they almost are acting like they haven't played together. What could be happening? What then is the elephant in the room? And what is transpiring that this team is looking like they're trying to figure each other out for the first few times? You all have heard me say this, and I'm going to continue to say it until I see it differently. And that is, I'm seeing the team do things on game day that they don't do in practice. And granted, we understand that practice is not as fast as game day. Understood. But I'm seeing just the overall execution. And we're going to get to coaching because you always know that's where I'm going to start. It's a leadership thing. It's always going to be a leadership thing with me. And then you got some players that just not executing as well. But I'm going to get to execution first because that's on the player side where I'm seeing catches get dropped that normally get made in practice. It's something, and I don't know if it's a bracing for a hit, not really anticipating the pace of the real game. I'm not sure what it is, but those passes get caught in practice. And On game day, they don't. And it's like, okay, are we, and now I'm going to switch to coaching for a moment. On the offensive side, are we just doing the play as that's the play call? Or if the play call isn't working, are we now in freestyle mode, impromptu mode, where we got to just make something happen? And in that time to make something happen, now you get sacked. I'm saying all of this to say that now I'm looking at the team very sideways, because see, when it was a time that what I was seeing in practice was what I saw on game day, then I wasn't dealing with anything. I'm like, okay, so be it. That's what I saw in practice. I see that in practice. But now there are things that we don't see in practice. Now, here's one thing that is coming back to bite them on offense that we would see in practice. And that would be, okay, on game day, when the defense is doing their thing, it's like, all right, on game day, that's a sack. On this day, that's a sack, right? But still not that many in practice. So you would think that as time has gone on, no, the media doesn't get to stay out there the entire practice, but as time goes on, I mean, we never saw a practice where there was 5 and 6 sacks in a practice. They're not actually doing the actual progression of an actual sack, but oh, that would have been a sack. We see it a couple times though. I'm going to tell you all the truth. We would definitely see it a couple of times, but not 5 or 6 and a half, or even through a whole entire game time. So now it becomes in week 7. If things are not resonating, and we're going to get to Jack in a moment. If things are not resonating, Jack Del Rio, that is, what then? How can things be communicated in a way that it starts to resonate with your receiver? Now, here in coaching and leadership, sometimes it's the messenger, sometimes it's the message, sometimes it's just how you are displaying and presenting the message. Something isn't getting clear. And that's where it's starting to get a gray area, at least for me. Because the only proof in the pudding I have is simply this: you're not getting better at things that you already weren't good at. Some of the things that you already weren't good at, you actually look worse now. What could that be? How could that be? I'm going to say another thing, very specifically to the Giants. The defense they didn't have a bunch of issues. This was not a team. It was so much focus on Daniel Jones, the offensive line, that everybody forgot that the Giants had a good defense. Defense was still intact, as everybody saw. And this was one of the things that we talked about last week on the show. Wait a second. It's a couple of different things. When you're dealing with the team with their backs are against the wall, and if you lose this next game, people can get fired. They're going to bring the heat. They're going to bring the heat on you. It's going to get hot real quick. This is a team that doesn't want to lose, especially not in the division, and they had their backs against the wall. For some reason, it was all this focus on Daniel Jones as if Tyrod Taylor was some bum. We're not dealing in a league now where your second string means sorry, or second string means you should have stayed at the high school varsity team. It wasn't that. We're dealing in a league where your backups, everybody's ready to roll. And especially when your backups get in, hey, they don't want to lose that opportunity. They don't want to lose that time, that check. They're going to come and bring their best. So last week on Thursday, I said, well, why is everybody acting like Tyrod Taylor isn't good? I'm going back to offense now. We already done talked about the defense because there was so much focus on the Giants offense and who was going to be out that people forgot. They got a good daggone defense over there. And that defensive line was going to give the Commanders' offensive line fits. But sometimes this is what we all do. We look at records. We don't look at players. We don't look at game plan. We don't see. They said it right. They threw a lot of things at us. Okay, but they really didn't do anything that they haven't always done. So you would think, again, I'm going to go back to what happened with the Bears. You played them last year. That same quarterback gave you fits last year. Somehow you just wasn't ready for them. Is this the case where not only are certain things that were challenges not being addressed in a way that resonates with your player experiencing that particular challenge? Because see, here's the reality. What works with one person, that same approach may not work with the other. And it may not work with somebody. It might work with 3 people, may not work with the other 4. May work with 10, maybe not with the other 12. You have to figure out what's going to work. But the proof starts being there once you start seeing things that no longer add up. And when you start to see, you're dealing with, and I want to address this comment here. I see from the First String podcast, it's time for new coaches, CWall, and I see this one, Ron is out of touch. Hey, listen, there is a difference in how this generation connects. And it's not necessarily well, we just got to do this. This is going to be the old school way of things. And you just need to do this way because I said so. And we've heard that. Do your job. You do the job the way that we tell you and you'll be successful. Well, perhaps they're doing it the way you told them and they're unsuccessful. So then what then has to change in how they perform? Because the reality, this team is far better. I'm going to just say they're far better than what is shown on Sundays. Now, at the same token, and I'm going to tell you all, I want you all, while I'm telling this story and while I'm sharing this, you all guess in the chat who I had to have my therapy session with after the game. Who I had to say, wait a minute, I got to go and talk to somebody. Somebody's going to talk to me because I have something that I need to say and get off of my chest. I don't have to do a show until tomorrow, but I need to talk to somebody. There's something about game day that the same rigor isn't there. And again, I'm going to go back to regression. Things that they already weren't doing well, they're doing worse. And things that were actually working don't seem to be working anymore. I'm not necessarily saying that the Giants were going to be an easy game. I said that on several shows. I said it before the pregame as well. I said, if ever you believed in a trap game, because I try not to believe in those because everyone is a professional. But if ever you believed in a trap game, this is a trap game. I said, I told y'all this against the Bears. I said it. And I got some backlash, Commanders fans, from people talking about, oh, you being negative. The Commanders got this in the bag. Not based on the history that I've seen. Trap game. If you believe in those things. If you don't believe in them, look out is what I would say. Watch your back. Because when a team is against the wall, they coming at you from all cylinders. They still professionals at the end of the day. So is this a situation where you say, we know what they're going to run. We know what they're going to do, but you're just going to rely on your starters being better than their backups. So this is not one of those situations where you can say, I just believe that my players are going to be better because of the caliber of players or who they even are on paper. You still have to prepare. It doesn't matter who you're playing. You still have to prepare and teach it as we got to go in here and win this football game. It's got to be the same level of rigor. But if you're doing something over and over again and getting the same result, I think it still equals to insanity. And I wasn't concerned. You all haven't guessed yet who I had my therapy session with. I'm going to tell you who I had my therapy session with. And we're going to go to Sam Howell's presser in a moment. I had my therapy session with the one and only Brian Mitchell and Santana Mall. Okay, I went to the press conference. I was at Ron's press conference. I went in the locker room. There was some unhappy people in the locker room, so I left out of the locker room. And I said, I'm going back over to the broadcast where they are at the broadcast, and let's talk. I need to talk. And great conversation because they are tremendous, as you all know. Love, like button, of course, would be Mitch and Santana. But the reality was simply this. The Giants, you know that they do this when you play them. It doesn't matter who is on the team. You know the caliber. You know what they do. You know what they're capable of. They just have the Commanders' number, and they always kind of have since the early 2000s. It's just the way that it's been. So you have an opportunity not just to beat the Giants, but to establish who you are. And it just, that message doesn't resonate. It's like the little things. And it's not characteristic of what I'm used to seeing with this team. I didn't see the level of corrective action. I'm going to go back to the defense. Yes, the defense, they stopped the bleeding, right? They stopped the bleeding. Hey, 14 points, that's all y'all going to get. That's it. But if we go back to offense, and you all know I had my things with the defense. You all know I had my things with the defense and still did, even though they held them to 14 points and still did. There were still moments in time where I was confused, couldn't figure out why the starters were on the sideline. Why are the starters on the sideline? Are they hurt? Because if they're not hurt, then what are they doing on the sideline? Just because they got their backups in don't mean you need to have yours in. Okay? That's just me, though. That's just CWall. But offensively, we've seen the Commanders score 30 a time or two. Seen them score 20 a time or two. They just couldn't get anything going offensively. And it was like, just tough it out. Just tough it out. Just tough it out. Just tough it out, which is the message we've been hearing. And, you know, I love the messenger. I love the messages. But at what point are you going to say just toughen it out and just working it through is not working today? I got to save my guy from himself. I got to save my people from themselves. We got to switch this up. You out there getting rocked. This is not going to work.